Transphobia is also the aversion, hatred, fear, or negative feelings and actions directed toward trans people or transsexual people. The concept of transness in general, it's a form of prejudice, discrimination, similar to how racism and sexism manifests in violence, harassment, negative attitudes. Transphobia can also include misgendering, public ridicule, violence, harassment, and Trump laws. What are the key aspects of transphobia? Well, the first one is negative attitudes and feelings. These can range from mild discomfort to outright hatred, disgust, and legislation. Second, discrimination and prejudice. This can involve denying transgender people equal access to housing, employment, healthcare, or other opportunities that heterosexual people claim as privilege. 3, violence and harassment. This can include physical assault, verbal abuse, sexual violence, or in worst case scenarios, hate crimes. Over 2,000 people in the U.S. every year are victims of hate crimes, and one of the largest groups of those hate crime victims, unfortunately, are trans people. And it's not just in America, it's everywhere. Luckily in America, they can't kill you for being queer in a court of law, but your neighbor might. Number 4, misgendering and other forms of disrespect. These actions can invalidate a transgender person's identity, causing emotional distress and dehumanization. In America now, you can be fired for misgendering somebody. 5, intersectionality. Transphobia can intersect with other forms of discrimination within the queer community or outside the queer community, such as racism, sexism, creating additional challenges for transgender people of color. Transphobia is a serious issue with significant negative impacts on the lives, the pursuit of happiness, and mental health of transgender people. We need to stop electing people into the White House that discriminate against people for any reason. We need to stop electing presidents who says it's okay to turn away able-bodied servicemen because they don't identify as a man anymore. Transphobia used to be thought of as a mental disorder in the early part of the 20th century. We now know better. It's not a mental disorder. It's a real problem. And by problem, I mean a lot of people don't take it seriously. There are a lot of negative beliefs about transgender people. A lot of people believe it's a mental disorder, hormone displacement, an identity crisis. But few people in extreme forms of religion go out of their way to understand these people. I didn't. How can you research something when your community completely erases it? I didn't even have the ability to research these kind of things or even accidentally be exposed to these types of interesting people because of how isolated and controlled I was. And it all interconnects. When you have people that don't just fit into one group, but they're also African American or gender fluid, people can be persecuted by different groups because they're a minority, they're trans, and maybe they have a disability. I mean, people are so bigoted in this country. I mean, you can't win. And anyone who denies the struggles trans people go through need to wake up and educate themselves. When laws and policies restrict trans people's access to resources and public spaces, we have a serious mental health problem coming our way. When there are harmful and demonizing representation of trans people in the media, movies, books, news, events, how can people be safe in their own skin when they can't identify with a healthy representation? Intentionally misgendering, misnaming, dead naming, and mispronouncing trans people's chosen words. Obsessing over trans people's bodies, especially private areas. Disclosing a trans person's identity without expressed permission or consent from the person involved. Using transphobic, bigoted language or stereotype. Referring to cisgendered people, non-trans people, as real, normal, natural, or biological. Debating trans people's existence or rights. Erasing them. Harassment, abuse, violence, including physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, and the list goes on. Transphobia isn't always overt or violent, but it has every intention of escalating to violence. It also includes microaggressions, which are more subtle comments or actions that express prejudice or discrimination towards a marginalized, oppressed group. This is important because many people might be quick to think, I'm not transphobic, I don't hate trans people, when someone presents them with constructive feedback on how to be a better ally, but could be committing microaggressions without having a clue. Why is transphobia and racism related? Transphobia is the product of white supremacy, the second highest hate group in America, that produces 3 out of 4, or 75% of acts of terrorism. So transphobia is a product of white supremacy and colonialization, displacing Native Americans. This relies on strict gender binary white supremacy culture, is upheld by an imagined and imposed superiority of white cisgender heterosexual masculinity. The connection can be seen in many ways. The coexistence and support of transphobic legislation with racist ones, such as curricula and book bans. Another way, the misogynor supporting anti-trans sports bans, using gender variance among indigenous people in the U.S. to justify genocide by marking them as racially inferior and uncivilized. So the intersections of racism, anti-blackness, xenophobia leads to higher adverse impacts for trans people of color in an array of arenas, from workplace and unemployment to health disparities and housing insecurities. Trans people of color are 6 times more likely to be victims of police brutality than white cisgender people. Transgender people in U.S. immigration detentions are held in men's facilities or in solitary, leading to trauma and psych distress. The vast majority of murders against trans people are against black and brown trans people. What are the connections between transphobia and sexual violence? While trans people face higher rates of sexual violence, specifically people of trans color, they have less protection from the law and other institutions. Research indicates that 50% of transgendered people have been sexually assaulted at least once in their life, yet are less likely to be identified as victims by court